Okay.
Okay. Everyone see this?
Yeah.
No, just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Okay. So
Actually, I like it better.
last time, I hope it was helpful for people. We had more of a general introduction. Again, it's good to see everyone. Again, thank you for coming back. General introduction to the Gemara, the structure of the Gemara, some of the history of the Gemara, the history of the page of the Gemara. So this class, we're going to look at together a few snippets. And I think this will, be even more instructive, again, especially if you've never really systematically learned Gemara. And I try to pick 3 different little snippets that are different, but show typical kinds of Gemaras, and really will give help us see some variety of typical kinds of Gemaras and be able to draw out some important points. Obviously, this doesn't cover the entire breadth of kinds of Gemaras and Gemara thinking, but I really think it will be helpful. So I think the best way is just to jump right in. Is that okay? Now, you have a page of we have the opening page, Daf Beis Amud Aleph of Maseches Pesachim, which we already saw briefly last time. Now you'll see, if I'll zoom in a little bit more. You see some periods, question marks, colons that I put in, which don't appear in a normal Gemara. A Gemara, one, it's in Aramaic, which is related to Hebrew but not Hebrew. There are not nekudot in a traditional Gemara vowels, and there's also no punctuation. So when you're learning how to read a Gemara, you're sort of learning how to do it without those aids. Often in middle school, high school, they'll give you a Gemara that has vowels and maybe punctuation. I'm not sure. So it is possible to get such Gemaras, at least on some Masechtas, but a typical Gemara doesn't have that. So that's also, what can handicap a person. Now, I didn't include an English translation, and for next time, if you tell me I should, we can. I just didn't know a good way to do it because I think it's important. We're trying to introduce you and give you a sense of a page of Gemara. I can also provide an English translation, but then it's going to be, I don't know, you're not going to be following the Gemara inside. But we'll see if people do strongly want some kind of English translation on the side that I can create. I'll try my best to do that. But I'm going to read the Gemara slowly, translating every word. And I really want people to jump in with any kind of question, a small technical question, like a big question, like, wait a second, how does this whole thing work? So really feel free to jump in. Good? Everyone with me?
Good.
Okay. Okay, so this is the opening Mishnah of Masechet Pesachim. And it reads as follows: or, that's the opening word right there in the middle, or la'arba asar. The middle column is the Gemara. The right column is Rashi. Left column is Tosfos, but we're really tonight just focusing on Gemara.
Is it always right, left, or is it middle?
Correct. It's middle column is Rashi, and left column is Tosfos. So when we flip the page, you'll see that. I'll point that out. The inside is Rashi. The outside is Tosfos. Excellent question. Thank you for asking. Or la'arba asar. At the light of the 14th, which the Gemara explains, and we saw briefly last time, it's a euphemism for night. Okay, it's kind of weird maybe for us because it's the opposite, or it means light, but it means night. The night of the 14th of Nisan, bodkin et chametz, we search for chametz, or haner, by the light of a candle, period. The Mishnah continues. Kol makom she'ein machnisim bo chametz. Any place where you don't bring in chametz, ein sarach bedika. You don't need a check. Okay. Makes sense. Now the Mishnah continues. Ubameh amru, and with what, or regarding what, did they say, Beis shurot b'martef, 2 rows in the wine cellar. Now, let me explain this. The Mishnah itself developed over time. So it seems that there was an old teaching in the days of the Mishnah that you need to check 2 rows of your wine cellar. Everyone knew that. And now this later edited Mishnah is referencing that old teaching and rhetorically asking, and when did we say you need to check 2 rows of your wine cellar? Question mark. Makom shemachnisim bo chametz. That's only if it's a wine cellar that you sometimes bring chametz into. The Gemara will describe you're eating a sandwich as you walk down there. But if it's a wine cellar that you never bring chametz, then you don't need to check your wine cellar. The Mishnah then continues in some of the details of this wine cellar. What does it exactly mean, 2 rows? And we have a machloka between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, the 2 famous schools. We're not going to get into those details. Okay, I think pretty straightforward, this Mishnah. Any questions on the Mishnah? Okay. This is basically the only Mishnah that talks about bedikat chametz, how you do bedikat chametz. This is it.
What, in the whole Gemara? I mean, Mishnah?
It's the only Mishnah. It's the only Mishnah. There's another Mishnah which says, what if you forgot to do your bedika at night? Then what do you do? And it says you do it the next morning. And there's one other somewhat related Mishnah. But this is basically it for bedikat chametz in the Mishnah. The Mishnah was really boiled down to sort of just core basic teachings, halachos. So the Gemara sometimes discusses a Mishnah directly. It clarifies a Mishnah. It asks, how does this Mishnah fit with another Mishnah? But sometimes a Mishnah just serves as an anchor for a certain topic, and thus any question, any discussion related to a topic will be attached to this Mishnah. So as we'll see, the Gemara has many discussions about bedikat chametz that are not really directly related to any point in this Mishnah. But this is the only Mishnah about bedikat chametz. So the next 10 pages of the Gemara are attached to this Mishnah. Only a very small amount of it is really commenting directly on the Mishnah. And the rest are bedikat chametz related discussions, but that are put on this Mishnah because there is no other Mishnah to connect it to.
So is this Mishnah straight from the Torah?
No. So, okay, excellent point. The Mishnah also is part of the oral law. This Mishnah, the requirement to check on the night of the 14th is totally rabbinic. The rabbis enacted that. So it's not commentary of a Torah mitzvah even. So this certainly does not go back to Har Sinai. Any Mishnah, the wording for sure doesn't go back. Some Mishnayot are putting into words the traditions that may go back to Har Sinai of explaining details of Torah mitzvos, but this Mishnah is not. This Mishnah is a rabbinic invention. Okay, so that's all I want to see on this page, just the opening lines of the Mishnah. So now we're going to scroll down. You'll follow my screen, or if you have it in front of you. Now I'm on Vav Amud Bet, 6b, in Masechet Psachim. Since this is a right page, as was mentioned, now Rashi is here on the left column, Tosas on the right column. And we're going to scroll down towards the bottom of the page.
Excuse me, in my Gemara, I've got like 1 dot on the one side and 2 on the other. So the 1 dot is
Amud Aleph, correct?
2 dots is Bet.
Correct. Yep. Some Gemaras have an English number on I forget either. I guess Amud Bet maybe. But yeah, that's just a printer's decision. Okay. So where you see my punctuation, I've started to put in. So here, if you see where my cursor is, or whatever it's called, these 2 dots are in the printed Gemara. Okay.
Move your mouse on your page. We can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, see where I'm. Yeah. So it's just small, so I want to make sure you notice it. So there are some 2 dots in the printed Gemara that mark off sort of new sections in the Gemara, because the Gemara is this long, this block of text. We said there are 10 pages on this opening Mishnah. So sometimes the printers, early printers, put in these 2 dots. There's no real rhyme or reason why sometimes they put in 2 dots to break off sections, sometimes not. But here it happens to be one. So here we're starting a new section.
But you're right. My page is exactly set up the same way yours is.
Every Gemara, almost any Gemara that is sold today will look exactly like this.
So didn't
The
know that.
Steinsaltz Gemara, there's, that has a different page, but basically you go into any standard typical yeshiva high school, yeshiva or seminary post high school, this is what they're looking at. Exact same.
I just somehow I never knew. I knew about the page thing because I know that's how you do references.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that you pick up my page that I have in my hand looks exactly like your page. The only difference is that the curly cues around the word or is a little different design.
Okay. Yeah.
Other
There are
than
people with photographic memories
Exactly.
that, they literally know, pages and lines and
Well, yeah.
yeah.
That's
Okay, so here we go. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav. Rav is the first generation of the Gemara sages. He knew the last sages of the Mishnah. He's the oldest generation, the first generation of the sages of the Gemara. And Rav Yehuda was one of his students. So we're going to have a teaching which is quoted by Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, meaning it was recorded that Rav Yehuda taught this psak in the name of Rav. What was the psak? Quote, Habodek tzarich sheyavato. That the one who checks and does bedikat chametz properly, as the Mishnah teaches, meaning the night of the 14th, they check their house. And let's remember, in those days, they don't sell their chametz. There's no selling of chametz like we do. They just got rid of everything. So habodek, someone who checks and gets rid of everything in their house, tzarich sheyavato, still is required to do bittul. Bittul is the verbal declaration that we do, kol chamira, in which we declare any chametz that is on my premises, I don't want it, I don't own it, it's like the dust of the earth, I have no interest in it. That's bittul, nullifying it. So now, why is that significant? There's no Mishnah that talks about bittul. There is no Mishnah that talks about this verbal declaration. Rav was quoted as saying that even though you checked your house up and down, and you, as far as you know, you've gotten rid of everything, you still must make this declaration.
So they're referring to a declaration that no one's mentioned up until this point?
It isn't, I mean, I assume it was known, it was like a common knowledge kind of thing in his day, but there's, in the text that we have, in our rabbinic texts, this is the earliest mentioning of it.
So the next thing is somebody says, what bittul, what are you talking about?
Very good, no. So it seems like everyone knew about this bittul. The Gemara is gonna ask similar questions, but it's not gonna question the premise.
It's nothing. Yeah,
Which is a very good point. Which you see that the Gemara, let me just read the next line. Maybe the Gemara does mean that. So the next 2 words of the Gemara are my tama. Ma is Aramaic for ma, what? Ta'am is like flavor or reason. What's the reason for this? Why do you need to do a bittul? If you checked your house, and again, let's say they had smaller houses, less couch cushions, I don't know, and you see there's no chametz, so why do you have to make a verbal declaration? So, well, maybe someone has a suggestion, but before that, so this typical setup of a Gemara, we have a teaching of Rav, an early Gemara sage. It's not commenting on a Mishnah, but it's connected to Bedika, so that's why it's here. And now the Gemara is going to start to analyze it. We had this tradition of this psak of Rav, but apparently they didn't have a clear tradition, exactly the reasoning behind it. So the Gemara is asking, why did Rav require you to also make this verbal declaration?
do they even define what this verbal declaration is supposed to be?
There certainly is no text, and even the halacha, we have a standard text, but but you don't need to say any standard text, and it does not really clarify it, and that's why you wouldn't be surprised that later commentaries, there are some arguments in the details about how this verbal declaration works, which we're not going to get into, but you're sort of seeing where where different understandings could come in. Okay, so let's continue in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "I nema mishum pirurin." If you will say that the verbal declaration, I nema means nema is like nomar, we will say, is mishum, is because pirurin means crumbs. Maybe you missed crumbs, right? That's pretty understandable. So the crumbs you didn't get rid of. So you need to make a verbal declaration, I have no interest in the crumbs, because otherwise you still own the crumbs, and then you're violating the Torah prohibition of owning chametz. Everyone following me? This is the Gemara's suggestion. So the Gemara says, no, that can't be. Ha lo chashivi. Ha is like this. This is not, chashuv is not significant, is not important. Meaning, what the Gemara means is crumbs are insignificant. No one cares about crumbs. And therefore, it really means they're automatically considered ownerless. And there's no problem of owning crumbs on Pesach. Here, by the way, we mentioned this at some of our pre-Pesach discussions. This is the Gemara itself. This is here, okay? This is the Gemara. The Gemara says,
You said that.
I said that, so I didn't make it up. It was just this Gemara. So crumbs are not a problem. Again, normally we have to read to the end of the Gemara to make sure that that's the halacha, but that's the Gemara saying now. Now, the Gemara continue. This is the Gemara's thinking. Let me just read a little bit more. V'chi tema. Hopefully everyone sees where I'm reading. V'chi tema, and if you are going to say, kevan, that since, de mintar lehu. Mintar is the Aramaic of shomer. That since you guard them, agav beite, sort of indirectly, beite means is like bite, because of his house. Meaning, if you're going to say, well, listen, but you have crumbs in your house. You lock the door of your house. You don't let people come into your house. That means you're saying this is my property, and everything included in this is my property, is my stuff. So you might not be thinking about the crumbs, but it's part of your stuff. You own your house and everything in your house. So then chashivi. So then crumbs do have some significance. You're the owner of these crumbs. So you need to make a declaration, because maybe you missed crumbs and you can't even own crumbs. Everyone understand where we are in the Gemara? This is sort of a typical back and forth of the Gemara. If you say this, but what about this? And the Gemara says, no, but maybe you should say crumbs are significant. It's part of all of your property that you lock up at night, showing your ownership. And therefore, you need to make a verbal declaration so you don't own any crumbs.
So, Rabbi, methodologically, what's going on here then with this kind of back and forth for the rabbis?
So they're trying to figure out Rav's reasoning, right? Meaning they're a little bit like actually was, sort of was suggested. The Gemara in a way is questioning Rav. They don't understand why Rav requires this bittul, this verbal declaration. If you do a bedika and a good bedika, and you're confident you got rid of anything significant, why do you need to make a verbal declaration? So it's an example of, we have this old teaching which would have been respected, especially from Rav. Rav is one of the most, if not the most important sages of the Gemara, but we don't really totally understand it immediately. Let's continue. So the Gemara right now is suggesting maybe crumbs are significant and you own the crumbs, and therefore you need to declare them ownerless. The Gemara says, Vehatanya. Maybe I'll teach you guys all the sing-song tune of how you read the Gemara also. So Vehatanya is a code word for Brisa. Tanan is like shoneh, Hebrew teach, but it was taught. The rabbis taught, and Vatanya is always introducing, other than in rare occasions, a brisa. A brisa is a teaching from the days of the Mishnah, but wasn't included in the Mishnah. Vahatanya, but we learned in a brisa. We're going to read a few lines here. Sofei te'enim, that means the end of the harvest of the figs, but meaning the very bad figs that no one cared about. Umeshamer sadehu, but you still lock up your field, you guard your field, mipnei anavim, because there still are good grapes. Or sofei anavim, maybe the end of the grape harvest when the only grapes that are left are so bad. Umeshamer sadehu, but you still guard your field, you lock it up. Mipnei mikshaot, mipnei midlaot, but you lock it up because of different gourds that are still good. So what's it saying? You have a situation where you have a field. There's some things in your field you could care less about. You wouldn't mind people coming and taking these old grapes, but you don't let people come into your field because you still have good gourds. So the brisa says, Bizman Shabal Habayis Makbid Alehem, as long as in the time that the owner, the Baal Habayis, still is Makbid, still cares about, let's say, the old figs, whatever they are, Asura Mishum Gezel. It is forbidden to take them because of Gezel, because of stealing. And because he still wants them, he owns them. V'chayavim b'maser, and therefore, since they are still owned, he would have to separate maser, the 10th, and all those special separations before he eats it. But this is the key line. Bizman she'ein bal habayis makbid aleim. But as long as the owner, when the owner reached the point where he could care less about these old figs or these old grapes, even though he's still locking up his field for the gourds, but the figs and dates and grapes, mutarim mishum gazel, in theory, if a person could come in and take them, because everyone knows no one cares about them. They're garbage. And they are exempt from maser because ownerless produce is exempt from maser. Period, end quote. I mean, what is the brisa saying? The brisa is saying that produce out in the field, when it's reached the point when we know that the owner doesn't care about it, they are automatically considered ownerless. Someone else could come take it, and it's no longer chayav obligated in meiser separations. And even if he's still locking the field, he's being shomer the field because of other produce that still is good, but still the stuff he doesn't care about, he doesn't care about. End quote. Now let me, before anyone jumps in. So what does that have to do with us? So this is all implied, and this is what Rashi will fill in. So it's saying, so therefore, so too by bedikas chametz, if there are crumbs, he doesn't care about these crumbs. And even though he locks up his house because he doesn't want someone coming in and take his furniture, but he doesn't care about the crumbs. So if he doesn't care about the crumbs, they're ownerless. It's not a violation of Pesach. So once again, why do we need to make a declaration that you are not interested in them? Okay, any questions? It could just be questions clarifying the Gemara if that wasn't clear. It could be a question of, more about the Gemara, but let's pause here for a moment. Any questions?
In the case of the crumbs, it's kind of obvious that you're not interested in the crumbs, but in the case of the old produce, who gets to decide when it's gotten to the point that those grapes are no longer something that the owner would want? I don't hear anybody saying the owner said he doesn't want them. They're saying you walk into the field and you're allowed to take them because the owner's not going to want them.
You're absolutely,
nobody asks the owner.
Correct. That is a very good point, practical point. The Gemara doesn't discuss that. I was seeing if Rashi gives you some kind of definition. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere that is discussed, if you notice the beginning of the quote, the Sofei Te'enim, in my Gemara, there's a little bet there, which I have to get used to this printing, that might go to another Gemara that discusses this. So maybe that's discussed somewhere. Practically, I don't know. But in principle, the idea is once someone doesn't care, basically it's automatically ownerless. It's really at a point where it's clear to all. You're right, it has to be clear to all, but it becomes ownerless.
I can never tell when the Gemara is going to be picky about something and when they're not.
I don't have a good answer for that.
To
Sometimes
me,
I'm
that
also
seems-
surprised, but the more you learn, the more you'll get, you do get a sense.
To me, that seems like the first question,
Well, again, there could, the Gemara here is sort of bringing this in, not tangentially, but this is not the prime place where this issue will be discussed. We're bringing it into our discussion of B'dikat Chametz. It is a good example. Another reason why I like this Gemara is the assumption of the Gemara is that the fundamental principles of halacha sort of apply across the board. We're not going to have different standards of, when things become ownerless for B'dikat Chametz versus Gezel stealing versus Meiser, separating the Meiser. If the person doesn't care about it, that's it. And then and that'll be the same definition for all of these halachas.
But I'm still like wrapped up around this person going into the field to steal the fruit. Somebody thought that fruit was worth stealing because they're even discussing it. Nobody's coming to my house to eat the crumbs off the floor, but somebody went into the field to get those dead grapes.
You are making a good point. Yeah, maybe if we were farmers, we'd have a better intuition to it. But I guess there's a point where any normal farmer doesn't like it. But, maybe a 12-year-old little kid likes climbing over fences and taking stuff.
No,
so, you couldn't reprimand the 12-year-old kid.
But just the fact that somebody's going to the effort to go and take this stuff means it must have a
Well,
value.
let me make another point. You shouldn't assume that it means that it was common for people to go in and take it. The Gemara will give rulings in extreme cases to just sort of point out the bull, even though it's very unlikely. So this person would be saying, listen, in theory, if some crazy person would want to come in and take it, they could. Not that really we expect the person to do that, or that would be common, but in principle they could. The point is, because it's the conceptual chiddush is that even though the owner never made a verbal declaration, or maybe even never consciously decided, I don't want these things, but halacha says at a certain point, when it's obvious to all that no one would want this, it automatically becomes ownerless. Let's continue. I already see I'm not going to get through everything I prepared. So we're right here.
Oh, shut up. Okay.
No, it's wonderful. It's just, that's the problem. There's so much to discuss. I didn't mean that at all. Amar, I'm very happy. You're asking excellent questions. Amar Rava. So Rava says, who is Rava? Rava lives about 100 years after Rav. Rava is also one of the most prominent sages of the Gemara. He's right in the middle of the Gemara period. The Gemara period is 250 years. Rav is the very beginning. Rava is right in the middle. So let's first see what Rava says. Amar Rava. Rava said, Gezerah Shema Yimsa Gluska Yafa. Gezerah, it is a decree, it is a fence, because perhaps he will find Gluska Yafa. That means literally a nice loaf of bread. You're right. We are not worried about crumbs. But sometimes you can do a badika and even miss a roll, a cookie somewhere. So in order, and the cookie a normal person would want, there's no automatic ownerlessness for a cookie, which is very edible, or a roll. So in order for the person not to violate Oni Chametz because he missed a significant piece of Chametz, that's why Rav said you still need to make a verbal declaration. The B'dika is not enough. The B'dika is not enough. I'm fudging that in the Gemara here because it gets a little bit complicated, which is not necessary for us. But that is Rava's answer, and that makes sense. You might not think it's likely, but in my experience, that does happen. You do sometimes miss something in a backpack, in a bag somewhere, and then there was a granola bar or something. So that's why you need the bittul. It's really not for the crumbs, because you're right, crumbs are insignificant, but there might be something bigger than that. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, so the only thing I'm going to point out is, again, Rava lives 100 years after Rav. So in this natural flow of the discussion, the Gemara says, Rav said this, and then we have sort of up here the My Taima, an unnamed Gemara, what they call the Stam Gemara, starts asking, well, what's the reason of Rav? And apparently the first sort of great authority that we can attribute to that really explained Rav is Rava 100 years later. Until then, maybe there were different opinions. Maybe some people said, no, it is because of the crumbs. And others said, it's not because of the crumbs. And somehow Rava was the one who resolved it and said, no, it's not because of the crumbs. Crumbs are not a problem. It's because you might have missed something big. Now, I'll be honest with you, in traditional learning, certainly when you're starting, in most places, when you're teaching middle school, high school kids and beyond, it's not so much pointed out, the different chronologies of Rava is 100 years after Rav. And to some degree, it's not important. The Gemara has been edited to present it as if all of these rabbis were there talking to each other. And on some level, that is true. It's a discussion that takes place over decades, sometimes hundreds of years. But as we're acquainting ourselves, it is something though to be at least generally aware, that sometimes as the Gemara presents discussions, in reality these rabbis didn't talk. But the way it's presented is so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that, but it wasn't really at the same time.
But doesn't it demonstrate an evolution?
Yeah, for sure.
And so then we miss out on that, right?
So again, if you know enough, you can't see it in the Gemara. So I'm trying to point this out here. There clearly was, this wasn't an evolution in the halacha, but it was an evolution in understanding the halacha. From Rav and to Rava. But for sure, there is definitely an evolution to it. Definitely. Okay, we only have 10 minutes. We're going to go to the next mini sugya. I wanted to do 3, but it looks like we're only going to be able to really do 2, which is fine. So this is, I'll scroll back. This is just a page or so later. This is the next page. What we were just looking at was Vav Amud Bet. This is Zion Amud Aleph. Okay, so scrolling all the way down to the bottom of the page. Okay, I might quickly plug in my laptop, but let me just do that. I don't think it's gonna die, but that'll be bad if it will die. So just hold on 1 second.
Что мы видим его скрин.
Okay. All right. So very towards the bottom of the page is the bottom of this page of Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda. So this is the same Rav Yehuda that started our last Gemara. That there was Rav Yehuda quoting Rav. Here's Rav Yehuda talking himself. Excuse me. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said, Habodek, the one who, when someone does bedikat chametz, sarech shiavarech, he needs to make a bracha. Okay, well, I guess generally speaking, any mitzvah we make a bracha, but you can definitely. This is not what we're going to do now, but the implication is it's not obvious. He had to say this, and then you have to start wondering why would bedikat chametz perhaps be different, that it would not get a bracha, this mitzvah, and there definitely are good reasons why one would maybe not have assumed there would be a bracha. But Rav Yehuda says there's a bracha. So the Gemara so end quote. That's all that's all we know that Rav Yehuda said. So then I'm trying to find my mouse. So here we go. So the Gemara says, that's like my mivarech. What bracha do you make? Okay, Rav Yehuda said he make a bracha. So what bracha do you make? So Rav Papi Amar Mishmei Derava. Rav Papi said, in the name of, that's like B'Shem Rava. This is the same great Rava of the last sugya. See, these are common names because these are important sages. So Rav Papi quoted Rava saying, well, skip that word, Levaer chametz, meaning you would say, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu levaer chametz. We were commanded to destroy chametz. Okay. Rav Papa Amar, Rav Papa said, Mishmei de Rava, in the name of Rava. So they're both quoting Rava. Rav Papi and Rav Papa were both students of Rava. And Rava definitely one time gave shir about this. And the students are arguing, what did Rava say? They're no, the second guy says, no, Rava didn't say you say Levayer Chametz. He said you say, Asher Kiddusha Misasivanu Al Bir Chametz. We are commanded on the destruction of Chametz. Anyone remember offhand what we say?
The second one.
Second one, very good. So Al Bir Chametz, excellent. So this is also common that there are arguments between sages what the Rebbe said. Not every page of Gemara, but very common. Not uncommon at all. So what is the correct version? Or what is more correct, perhaps? This is a classic example the Rishonim will discuss. Does each one think the other version is invalid? Or they just argued what is the more correct version, but not that the other version would be invalid. So there is this argument, what did Rava say? Okay. Any thoughts, comments at this point?
Well, how does the final version get determined?
Very good. In this case, we're gonna see that. I hope everyone we're probably gonna go just a few minutes over.
Oh.
So the Gemara says, Bilevaer, the version of Levaer, to destroy, Kuli alma lo pli is a very common phrase. That's like kol ha'olam, the entire world. Lo pli means does not argue. No one argues that the phrase levaer, divadai, that certainly lehaba mashma implies lehaba means future. Levaer means to destroy. So that's saying I'm commanded to destroy, which is good because you say it before you do the mitzvah. Every bracha you say before the mitzvah. So that's a proper language. Everyone will agree. I'm commanded to do this. I'm scrolling down because this discussion continues on to the next page.
Well, isn't the language of mitzvahs that are things that you do more in, I don't know what the different terms of grammar are, but you don't say al notlim yadayim, you say al netilat yadayim.
Right, but why don't you say litol yadayim? Right, to wash. We say we are commanded on the washing.
No, I don't know, but it's the same.
That's just Gemara. That's
It's the same.
Let's continue. Let's continue.
It's the same kind of grammar.
Exactly. So key plea. When do they argue? What is the argument about? Be al bir, regarding the formulation of al bir, that we are commanded on about destruction. Mar Savar, one master believes, me'ikara mashma. That has the connotation of me'ikara of the past. Umar Savar lehaba mashma. And one master, mem samach is Mar Savar. One master thinks lehaba mashma. And lehaba means it is future. Let me explain what the Gemara is saying here. We make a bracha before we do the mitzvah. So everyone agrees the formula should mean I am commanded to do this. I've not yet done it. I'm commanded to do it. It's not reflecting on what I already did. It's what I'm commanded to do. So everyone agrees that levaer, I'm commanded, levaer means to destroy, is a good formulation because that's what I'm about to do. I'm commanded to do this, what I'm about to do. But what about al bir, which means I'm commanded regarding destruction? That's what that word, that phrasing means. Vitzivanu al bir chametz. We are commanded about the destruction of chametz, as opposed to I'm commanded to destroy chametz. So one version, under one opinion held, I'm commanded about the destruction of chametz, can also mean I'm about it to do it, but referring to what I'm about to do. Another opinion thinks that no, if you don't say I'm commanded to do it, but I'm commanded about it, that sounds like it's something that has already happened, which would be an improper formulation because then it's referring to the past, which it shouldn't be. It should be referring to what I'm about to do.
Well, you really already got rid of it.
Yeah, but
No,
thank
this is before,
God.
well, that's because nowadays we already clean our houses. But in principle, that's all just preparation.
But now
This
I'm thinking,
before-
well, like when you light candles, you don't say al hadlakat nerot.
You say lahadlik, correct.
Yeah.
So let's read a little more. See, now you're noticing. Why is it? Think about all the brachos we say. We say
Some of them are one way and some of them are the other.
correct. Why is that?
Oh my
That's
God.
that's
I have
what
no
this Gemara
idea.
discusses. We say lahadlik ner shel Chanukah, but you don't say le'echol matzah. You say al achilat matzah. So you might have thought it's no. What's the difference? But the Gemara apparently it is. They argued about these
I
things.
never thought about it.
So we're just going to read a few more lines. Meisvei always introduces a brisa also, and one that is a question on a sage of the Gemara. Because again, if you're in the Gemara, you can't argue on a brisa, which is from the days of the Mishnah. Meisvei, quote, the brisa is just telling you what you say at a bris milah. Baruch, ... Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al hamila.
Что завтра будем говорить?
You have it. You say al hamila. You don't say lamul, to circumcise. You say we are commanded about circumcision, even though you're going to do it. You say it before the circumcision. So you see that al hamila, al, about the mitzvah, is a perfectly fine way to say it. So that disproves the one who said, no, it must be le, to do it. So the Gemara says, no. Hasam there, first milah is different. Hasam there, heicha nema. How should we say it? What are you going to say? Nema lamul? What do you want it to say? You want it to say, Asher Kiddushan, we are commanded lamul, to circumcise? But that by bris milah would be inappropriate. Why? Lo sagia, these are hard Aramaic words, dilav ihu mahil. That means it is not necessary for him to circumcise. What that means is, Rashi explains, at a typical bris, even back then, the father didn't do the bris, a moel does the bris. The mitzvah, the commandment, is upon the father. So it would be inappropriate for the moel to say, Baruch Hashem, blesses the Lord that commanded me to circumcise this boy. Because the moel is not commanded to circumcise this boy. He has no personal obligation. He's doing a favor for the father. The moel can say, God commanded me about circumcision. Al hamila. He commanded me about circumcision. But he didn't command me, lamul, to circumcise, which implies I'm obligated to do this action. But the moel is not obligated. He's not the father. So what the Gemara is introducing to us is that not every mitzvah is different. So the Gemara here is saying that you would only say li if it's a mitzvah that is incumbent upon me to do this specific action. So when it comes to bedikat chametz, I am obligated to check my house. So one opinion says by bedikat chametz, you need to say livayer. I'm commanded to do this. And the other opinion said, no, you can say I'm commanded about destruction regarding, I'm commanded regarding bir chametz, and that's fine. The Gemara continues from here down to here, discussing different mitzvot, different sources. Do you say al? Do you say li? This particular Gemara has a conclusion. This was Richard's question. Let me scroll down just a little bit more. Here I've underlined. The Gemara concludes, v'hilchasa, means, and the halacha is al bir chametz. That's the more correct language for bedikat chametz. Sorry, Richard, did you say something?
Who's saying that?
Excellent point. So it is the unnamed Gemara. The
Yeah.
scholars would say that will be very late, at the last stages of editing the Gemara, maybe even inserted by the period after the close of the Gemara. There's another very a period called the Savarayim, which were sort of late editors, and maybe it was stuck in because that was the accepted practice, and so a very, very late editor added, and the halacha is, the practice is al bir chametz, but it's part of the unnamed Gemara, which we'll discuss more. Hopefully, we'll have another opportunity. It's not attributed to any particular person. So this is an example where the Gemara has a machlokas and does come down and paskin one way. That is not always true at all. Majority of the time, probably it does not do that. But this is not rare at all. It is also common for a Gemara to conclude and say vehilchasa. Now to some of Louise's questions though, it's clear the Gemara, if you learn this whole Gemara, the Gemara is recognizing there can be more than one factor of what should determine the proper formulation of a bracha.
Right. It's like I'm going through everything in my head now and thinking, well, sometimes like it's al achilat matzah, but then it's lahadlik ner Shabbat, you know?
Yeah. So this is a very interesting thing to discuss. Maybe one time we'll have a share just about this. So the Rishon and the medieval authorities already asked many of these questions. And on some of the brachos, there were arguments. What's the right formulation? And others created other rules. I believe the Rambam says there's a difference if it's a Torah mitzvah or a rabbinic mitzvah. So there are other considerations that people included. So that'll be part of the further discussions. But so here we have, as opposed to our first Gemara, this is an example of a Gemara where there's a machlokas. There were two opinions. The Gemara tried to bring proofs for one opinion over the other. The truth, at the end of the day, the Gemara does not have a definitive proof for either opinion. But nevertheless, the Gemara does conclude and say one opinion was the accepted halacha. Now, this Gemara, again, is not really interpreting or commenting on any particular part of our Mishnah. It's a discussion about bedikat chametz, which then expands to a much larger question, which cuts across all mitzvot and all brachot. What is the proper formula? Mm-hmm. But the initial impetus for the discussion was the bracha of bedikat chametz. So it's put here in Masechet Pesachim and on this Mishnah. Mm-hmm. I had a third Gemara, which we're not going to do, which was actually going to be an example of a Gemara where the Gemara is commenting on the Mishnah, asking, what does this Mishnah mean? And really working through interpreting the Mishnah. So we're not going to be able to do that tonight, but I'll try to make sure that, again, the next two sessions, we're going to focus just on one sugya, one Talmudic discussion. And the next class, we'll really just focus on the Gemara. We'll read maybe a larger piece and even slower and asking more questions and pointing out the kinds of things we've been pointing out. And then the last class, we'll get into some of the post-Talmudic discussion. What did the commentaries discuss? What were the arguments after the Gemara? So that's what we'll be trying to do the next two times.
I have a question.
I can stay on. I'm going to stop here. If anyone needs to get off, feel free. But if people have more questions or anything else they want to share, please do so.
Can I ask a question, a practical one? So if the father does Brit Milah himself, what does he say?
I should have continued the Gemara. That is the Gemara's next question. Just because you said it, Arkady. So, we were right here. We said, Lo sagi de la viumol. Since the mole is not obligated, he can't say le. So the Gemara's next question is, Avi haben, my ikla memer. So the father of the son, what are you going to say? So the Gemara says, now this is one of the trickiest things when you're learning Gemara at the very beginning. In is Aramaic, which means yes. In Hebrew, ein means no. But in Aramaic, it's in, and it means yes. So this is a phrase, in, or sometimes it's pronounced in traditionally ein, but ein hachi nami, which means yes, indeed that is so. Meaning it's how you retort when someone asks a question, what about this? And you say, yeah, that indeed. So indeed, if the father will do the bris himself, he recites a different bracha, and he says, I am obligated to do this. So it's an excellent question. That's the Gemara's question itself.
So we should tell that Saul for tomorrow morning.
What's the news?
Oh, you
Do they
don't
have
know?
a baby?
Yeah, Yeah, they had a baby.
Mazel tov.
Okay.
Oh my, one.
Tomorrow is bris.
Wow, wonderful. I'm sorry you can't be there. Yeah, but okay, I'll tell Ariel and everyone. That's wonderful news. I normally hear about it through Facebook or something, but
So you see, it's so relevant.
yeah, that is pretty amazing. Okay, that's wonderful news. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yes.
when it says, and the halacha is,
Yeah.
is that the halacha forever? Like, that's not disputed now? It's the halacha?
No, not at all. No. Anytime, no, you will not find a dispute about that. Again, it's not so common for a Gemara to conclude this way, but it's not uncommon. And no, there won't be any dispute. If you find someone that does argue about it, if there would be a case, that would be a proof that this must have been some later edition, not really in the original Gemara, because again, there might be always some rare 1 in a million exception to any rule, but no, certainly in this case, it's not disputed. That's what we say. Al bir chametz.
Thank you.
I got a small technical question.
Yeah.
When you open the Gemara and you got 2 pages open in front of you,
Yeah.
the right-hand page is actually Amud Bet of the previous page.
Correct.
The Gemara is in the middle. Where's the Rashi?
Middle.
Rashi is always in the inside, like the Rashi's closest to the binding of the Gemara,
Okay.
and Tosfos is on the outside column.
Inside.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And
And any other questions or comments?
I'm on Tfilas Yadayim, Rabbi.
Why is that? Why do we say Al Natilas Yadayim?
Because you
I think the Rambam says because it's rabbinic.
No, because you said a bracha before the action. We're learning about that in
Oh, very good. Well, Al Natilas Yadayim is a rare case where you say the bracha after the action, so then it also makes sense to be Al. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
people should come to Mincha Marav, learn about that.
Okay.
I'll plug it in.
Right.
Marav.
Any other
You do the
questions?
action first, and then wait. You do the action first, and then you say the bracha. Yeah, that's right. You do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me ask: is this helpful? Are you guys?
Yeah.
Are you guys getting a sense from like? Okay. That's
Yeah.
It's nice.
And so the idea is the next
Perfect.
time where there's a shear and I present a piece of Gemara, but I do it more quickly, we have a better understand. Like, oh, the Gemara quotes a brisa, so that can sort of knock off an Amora. He can't argue with that. And just a general sense. These are the kinds of questions we're all.
Yael Jaffe gave a class that also where she sort of introduced a lot of the terminology.
Yeah,
I
I am pointing out some keywords, but I'm not real. This happens to be how I put it. I'm not really focusing on the words and teaching you how to read a Gemara. Honestly, I just can't do that in this amount of time. It is challenging to learn to really read the Gemara. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, everyone should have a good night
Thank
and
you.
good Shabbos.
Thank
you.
And thank you very much, everyone. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Before we sign off. So next week, Mincha Marv, it's starting to get a little later. Is it okay if we start? I will be happy to do either. Either we can just start 5 minutes later, or we
Okay.
could start doing it before Mincha. We could do it at 7 p.m.
No,
5 minutes
too
later.
early.
Okay, so 8:20.
Good.
8:20.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Okay.
Good.
Keep putting
That's a
the
lot.
link in the email.
Thank you, everyone.
you.
Thank you, Chavez.
Good Shabbos.
Rabbi, when you share your screen, I don't see your mouse moving, so I have no idea where you're pointing to.
Okay, I'll try to, yeah.
But
So what do you suggest,
I
Howard?
use the links that you provide in the email, and I can actually make it so large I can actually see that I can actually read the text.